Okay, it looks we're live on YouTube now.
Fantastic. Thank you, everyone, and good morning. I will call this meeting to order. It looks like at 10:01. And Alicia, is it you who will get us started with the roll call?
Yes, I'll do the roll call. Vice President, Member Baker, Member Broussard,
Present.
Member Burton,
Here.
Dr. Kaur,
Here.
Superintendent Hoffman,
Here.
Member Kay,
Here.
Dr. Mack,
Here.
Dr. Robbins, Member Ruiz,
Present.
Member Wellborn, Member Wellborn.
Present.
Thank you. President Narducci
Here.
and Member Baker.
Present.
Thank you. You have a quorum.
Thank you so much, Alicia. Although President Narducci is with us here, I'll be chairing the meeting. He's going to pop off and then pop back on. President Narducci, any president's report at this time?
None at this time, and thank you for handling the meeting, and welcome to everybody.
My pleasure. So with that, we'll turn to the superintendent. Superintendent Hoffman, your report, please.
Thank you, Dr. Kaur. Good morning, President Narducci, board members, and good morning to everyone. I want to first take a moment to acknowledge the different native lands that we occupy today. The Department of Education building sits on the O'odham and Hohokam lands. So we're going to first turn to the Presidential Awards for Excellence in Mathematics and Science Teaching. And I think there's a slide that could go with this. So let's wait 1 minute while we get that set up. Perfect, thank you so much. So I am thrilled that the following Arizona teachers have been named as state finalists for the Presidential Awards for Excellence in Mathematics and Science Teaching. Each year, the President of the United States recognizes outstanding mathematics and science teachers by bestowing upon them the Presidential Awards for Excellence in Mathematics and Science Teaching. These awards demonstrate the value and appreciation the nation has for its teachers. A finalist will move forward to a national level. Those who are selected as the awardees for this honor are a premier group of highly qualified teachers who have both deep content knowledge of the subjects they teach and the ability to motivate and enable students to be successful in these content areas. Collectively, they reflect the expertise and dedication of the nation's teaching corps, and they demonstrate the positive impact of excellent teachers on student achievement. Again, I'm just so thrilled to announce the 2020 Arizona finalists for Science and Mathematics have been nominated by Arizona for selection. Our Excellence in Elementary Science Teaching state finalist is from Winifred Harrelson Elementary, a 5th grade teacher, Robin Ewell from Amphi Public Schools. Next, our Excellence in Elementary Mathematics Teaching state finalist is Tucson Country Day School 4th grade teacher, Aggie Post. Our 2019 Excellence in Secondary Science Teaching National Awardee is from Las Brisas Academy 7th and 8th grade general science teacher, Christine Mendoza, who teaches at Liberty Elementary she teaches in the Liberty Elementary School District. Our 2019 Excellence in Secondary Math Teaching National Awardee is from Campo Verde High School AP Calculus and Honors Algebra teacher, Linnea Baum. I wish we could all be together to celebrate these awardees in person and give them a big round of applause, but we are celebrating these teachers virtually, and congratulations for this high achievement and recognition. Next, I'd like to share announcements around the Sr2 allocations. Last week, I was pleased to announce the allocation of over $1 billion in Sr2 funding to our state's public district and nonprofit charter schools. These new funds were allocated to our state through the Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act, which was enacted by Congress in December of 2020. Every school must have the necessary resources to support its staff, students, and families throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. And typically, our small, rural, and remote schools they're too often left behind when resources are allocated. And so that's why I prioritize ensuring that every public school, regardless of size or location, had access to federal relief funding. The Arizona Department of Education is contributing discretionary dollars that we received from this federal funding to ensure that every nonprofit LEA receives at least $150,000 in base funding, with $175,000 guaranteed for rural school districts and charters, and $200,000 guaranteed for the most remote school districts and charters. Allocation information is available on our website, and we are also hosting a Sr2 grant application webinar February 24th from 2 to 3 p.m. Please visit our COVID-19 website on the ADE website to see allocations and to register for the webinar. I'd also like to mention some updates around the new CDC guidance. On behalf of ADE, we're very dedicated to ensuring that our schools and communities have the most up-to-date research and evidence-based information to make decisions around the safety and well-being of our communities. And I want to first acknowledge the impact that COVID-19 has had on our school communities. Our educators have experienced fatigue from changing back and forth between different models, and our students as well, and whether it's online or in person, it's really taken a toll within our school communities. And I know there have been many community members who have experienced illness or even tragically the loss of a loved one or an important community member. So going forward, as we want to continue to make sure safety and well-being is at the forefront of all the decisions that we make, we are committed to helping our school communities to understand and implement the new CDC guidance, which is not significantly different than what we've already been doing here in Arizona. So just to emphasize some of the top points from the new CDC guidance is the emphasis around masks and social distancing being the keys to having safe in-person learning, that these mitigation strategies should continue to be layered, and also an emphasis around having decisions being made at the local LEA and even school-specific factors such as positive cases, so COVID positive cases within each school, looking and measuring and keeping track of in-school transmission and local rates of transmission, and also ensuring that we're looking at a school's ability to implement the layered mitigation strategies at the classroom level. So looking at all these different factors, it's really important to be transparent in sharing this information with families, with school staff, so that they can feel that they have strong trust in the decision-making at the administrative level. And right now is really the time for planning and implementation of these mitigation strategies. And we want to make sure that we're prioritizing certain vulnerable populations, especially for in-person instruction. So again, ADE is committed to providing informative messaging to our schools to help disseminate that information out to families and staff. We want to make sure we're adhering to the CDC recommendations and research as it comes out, and to help with this messaging and to make sure that we're being as vocal as possible about the importance of these messages. I will be hosting a press conference this Wednesday, February 24th at 1 p.m. to help ensure that we're getting this messaging out and again, providing our communities with this very important and most up-to-date information possible. Last, I would like to turn it over for our Student Advisory Council presentations. So for every State Board of Education meeting, we invite student advisors on behalf of the ADE Student Advisory Council to present on topics that are important to them. It is such a great opportunity to hear directly from our students. And today we have two students, Shandy Helms and Neil Kuviyarsu. And so let's go to Shandy first.
Hi, my name is Shandy Helms. I'm from Marin Sears and I go to Fairbanks Middle School. I have 2 points that I want to make today. The first is students' mental health. Even before the pandemic, many students were struggling with their mental health. I feel that school systems do not pay attention to this problem very much. Students in schools around my area, at least, do not have the opportunity to meet with counselors due to the school districts not having the funds for them. This year, my district was able to hire one and it has benefited many students. I have the opportunity to speak with a few students who mentioned that they have felt less stressed and more valuable since having weekly meetings with the counselor. I would like to see more counselors accessible to students, especially in rural areas. The other topic is drug abuse. Drug abuse has been very widespread lately, starting from middle school age and up. In my personal experience as a 7th grader, so many students are already addicted to nicotine, vapes, and many other harmful substances. I strongly believe that the school system needs to work harder to prevent this from happening. Things such as harsher punishment, bringing back programs such as DARE, and providing classes to teach kids the honest and harmful effects that can happen to our bodies and minds would be beneficial. Thank you for giving me the opportunity today.
Thank you so much, Shandy. And next we have Neil.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Neil Kuviyarsu, and I'd also like to talk about 2 topics, but mine actually concern physical health and the environment, which I think are like the 2 most important things, because the physical health is us and then environment is where we live. So I wanted to make sure that we already have PE and we already teach kids, but maybe make kids a little bit more self-aware, because right now it feels like someone's telling them what to do and they don't realize that health is something they have to take care of until they're on their own. So maybe some activities in a way that they make their own diet for a week so that they start to care for themselves. And also about the environment, not everybody needs to go out there and, you know, fight for the forest and everything. But if we kind of make more kids aware of what's actually happening, of like what's actually happening to the place where we live, at least 1 in 100 of them will turn into something big, and the rest of them will at least care and do what they can instead of hurting more. So that's what those are the 2 most important things that I thought needed to be addressed a little bit more than what we're doing already.
Thank you so much, Neil. It's really great to hear from you both today.
Thank you.
And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Superintendent. And you're right, always great to hear from students. Appreciate that. Alicia, Executive Director report.
Vice President Kaur, no Executive Director report today.
Okay, fair enough. Then we will move on to number 2, call to the public. This, of course, is a time for the public to comment on items not on today's agenda or on the consent portion of today's agenda. We would ask that speakers limit their remarks to 3 minutes. Director Williams, have we received any requests to speak at this point?
Vice President Kaur, yes, we have. We have 6 individuals, and I'm just going to give it a second to allow for Jessica to allow them into the meeting.
Okay.
All right. You see our first speaker is here. So first we have Kayla Svedin, followed by Jenny Clark. Kayla?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Thank you, President Narducci, Superintendent Hoffman, members of the board. Thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Kayla Svedin. I am an ESA parent, and I am here with a comment about a recent experience that I had with the new appeals process that the Department of Education must go through with the State Board of Education regarding purchases. I purchased in Q3 for my daughter a physical product, Rosetta Stone languages, Spanish. It included a hard copy dictionary, included discs and all that. Included in this bundle was a lifetime membership to their online service for one user, my child. This expense was then rejected by the ADE, stating that the lifetime membership was not allowed because the contract with ESA only goes through a year. Now, this is irregardless of the fact that it wasn't a family membership or anything like that, but that it was just for my student. It was curriculum, and this allows her to continue learning online without additional payments. I made this purchase. It was $149. It was a Christmas sale. If I were to have purchased the unlimited lifetime subscription for her, it would have been an additional $200. I went through the appeals process, which seemed pretty new to everybody because apparently not very many parents have gone all the way through this appeals process yet. So it was a little clunky. Now, when I actually dug in my heels and said, yes, we're going to go all the way to the hearing, which wouldn't have been until April, the Department of Education reversed its course and decided that no, it was going to be approved because it didn't count as something that was having updated content for the unlimited subscription, which isn't actually true. But even if it was, I submit that ESA parents should be allowed, if we are allowed to purchase a monthly subscription to a curriculum service, something like Rosetta Stone, which is the leading foreign language learning thing, then buying it one time and having that access for that child for the life of their education should be allowable. And this should be changed in the rules, because if it's approved once and you're paying monthly for it, we should allow parents to save public money and pay one time for a complete subscription. That's my comment. I know that we are going to be looking at rules changes again later this year. I think that this is an issue that affects many ESA families, and it is a change that is desperately needed because our kids deserve to learn in an efficient way at the cheapest price. Thank you.
Thank you, Kayla.
Next up, we have Jenny Clark, followed by Julie Batt.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead, Jenny.
Great. Thank you for letting me speak today, members. My name is Jenny Clark, and I am the founder of Love Your School, a nonprofit here in Arizona that helps educate parents about the school options available to them in our state. As part of our work, we help parents find educational options that work for their family, including those under the Arizona Department of Education. So that includes district, charter, open enrollment, and of course, the Arizona Empowerment Scholarship Account Program. The majority of the families we have assisted so far that have shown interest in ESA are special needs families. So after we get them onto the ESA program, sometimes, even going into their homes and helping them scan appropriate paperwork, contacting their schools, we also help them navigate the ESA program, like other advocacy groups and Facebook groups that are out there, such as Arizona ESA Networking and Families. So I answer calls and texts from families before and after they get on the ESA program. And it's, nights, weekends, whenever these families who are often already dealing with a lot by coordinating special services for their kids are available. They can call at any time, and it, of course, is a joy to help them. But currently, there is no official process in which the parents can request from ADE the ability for me to advocate on their behalf. For example, a family that I am presently assisting has just been accepted onto ESA and their daughter is blind. The mom is working on getting her daughter set up in a new school and trying to figure out how to use Class Wallet, managing approval requests for critical and necessary items like a braille list and a braille printer or braille note, and she could use assistance. Now, not all situations require me to contact ADE. However, this particular family's situation required it, and others have in the past. The daughter has been approved for specific braille items that cost more than her quarterly ESA disbursement. and the daughter needs these items now in order to continue her education and access educational materials in Braille. So to be clear, the annual scholarship award amount would cover these items, but the quarterly dispersed amount will not. So I reached out to the ESA department at the parents' request to see if a solution could be found for this family. The department said they were unable to communicate with me about this family and the parent would have to contact ESA directly, which is understandable. So I worked with the parent to reach out to ESA and no solution for this particular issue was unfortunately given. And additionally, the parent and I had to continue to work together because the item that she could purchase now with her funds and had an approval for was rejected when she attempted to order it through ClassWallet's concierge program. And it took several more days for this parent to get a response from ADE. She actually just texted me a few minutes ago and said, make sure to let them know that I've been working on this for 2 weeks and my daughter needs these items. And I've spoken to 3 people at ADE and 2 people at ClassWallet, and we still have no solution. The mom told me in frustration last week, this is why parents give up. And that's a quote. The program is almost too difficult to manage on your own. So I would like to respectfully request SBE and ADE consider developing a simple process in which parents can designate someone, an individual or a nonprofit, to assist them in matters with the department when necessary. Because of busy work schedules and coordinating their children, parents may have trouble reaching ADE during work hours and finding a person who can actually answer their question that day. So I field questions and offer support to families every week who require that additional assistance regarding the ESA program. And it would be beneficial to everyone, I think, if a process could be developed. And just for reference, and I can't see the timer, I get parent referrals all the time from other charity organizations and nonprofits, and they send me a simple release of information that accompanies their request for me to assist that family. So I know that the parent has given permission to be contacted. I think something similar would be great. And then also, I just think it would seem appropriate that in specific and clearly necessary situations, like this family who needs a Braille printer and other items that exceed their quarterly ESA disbursement, that some sort of solution could be found so that they can access another quarter's funding if it's a very extreme and needed situation. Thank you for your time.
Jenny. Thank you.
Next up, we have Julie Batt, followed by Christine Emmanuel. Julie?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Julie. Go ahead.
Okay, great. Hi, my name is Julie Batt, and I have 2 children in the ESA program. I run a couple support groups, and I help parents navigate applying for and using the ESA. On February 2nd, just a few weeks ago, ADE closed their ESA applications for the current 2021 school year, despite state statute which says the department shall accept applications between July 1st and June 30th of each year. The department shall enroll and issue an award letter to eligible applicants within 45 days after receipt of a completed application and all required documentation. The new board rules for ESA echo the same timeframe. There's no legitimate reason ADE has stopped taking the applications. 4th quarter funding doesn't even come until the end of April. Plus, ADE has been funding ESA accounts almost immediately in the same quarter the parent signs the contract. Additionally, they give extensions for parents to sign these contracts. So if a parent applied before the February 2nd cutoff, they could actually wait to sign their contract in May in the middle of 4th quarter, and ADE would still fund them for the 4th quarter. With this difficult year, parents are still weighing their options. Some pulled their children out of school while they waited for their school to open, but as COVID restrictions have lingered, they're seeking alternatives to educate their children until more normalcy returns. I've heard from at least 10 parents in the past 2 weeks that want to apply for the current year, but no longer can. And some of these parents have lost ESA eligibility altogether because they unknowingly took a gap year during the pandemic and therefore are no longer eligible to apply for next year. I implore the board, Superintendent Hoffman, to please have the department follow the rules, leave the 2021 applications open, and give our kids this option. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Julie.
Next up, we have Christine Emmanuel, followed by Brian Bullington. Christine?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Perfect. My name is Christine and I am an ESA parent. I have 3 kids on the ESA program now. As a parent that was very involved with my child's education in the public school system, my daughter struggled even with the accommodations she had in her classroom. She had a new teacher every year, which meant that she had to learn a different way every single year because teachers have different teaching styles. With the ESA, she has been able to have the most consistent education that she has ever had. Since 2017, there has been only one adult involved in educating her, which means that she did not have any interruptions in how she learned since 2017. We are very thankful for ESA and the barriers that it has broken for our kids. I do want to, however, hit on the denials that happen at the ESA department. There are parents that have had denials on products that should not be denied, and that is kind of something that needs to be fixed. But as you all know, in the last few months, the State Board of Education has taken on the rulemaking for the Empowerment Scholarship Account. SBE being involved in ESAs has made a world of a difference for ESA families. And we are so thankful for your hand in the success of our wonderful program. And even though we have hit a few bumps in the road, we look forward to keep working with the State Board of Education in the future rulemaking process. So thank you. We appreciate you.
Thank you, Christine. Next up, we have Brian Bullington, followed by Esley Montenegro. Brian? Brian, you're up next. Are you on the line? You may have to unmute yourself, Brian.
Sorry, thank you. Okay, how about that?
We can hear you. Go ahead, sir.
Okay. President Narducci, Governing Board members, Superintendent Hoffman, I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today. I'm the superintendent at Baghdad Unified. I also serve as the administrator at Owens Elementary in Wickiup. If you've been through there, you know it's a small district. We run about 20 to 24 students a year. This year with COVID, we're running about 16 students. My purpose for today's comment is an unusual conflict between 2 different performance measures or indicators. In November of 19, we were notified that we were in school improvement based on the spring of 19 data or school year data from FY19. A day later, we were notified that we would be receiving results-based funding that is managed by school finance, and that's a legislative provision. All of that was based in part on AZ merit data. Obviously, there's other factors, as you well know, in the A through F accountability system. It's obvious to us that we're getting results-based funding because our students scored in the 87th percentile and higher amongst free and reduced schools that are 60% or higher in the state. Yet we've been continuing on a school improvement plan that is managed by ADE. I've consulted with others at ADE, and this appears to be an anomaly. I think part of it is the low numbers that we have at Owens Elementary. There's bonus points that we can't get. Secondly, besides the conflict in these 2 programs, with the testing being canceled last spring, no profiles given this fall, and your recent decision to cancel A through F letter grades again for this year, we're going to be entering 3 years of school improvement without any opportunity for relief. There's no opportunity to get out of it. And I don't know if you've ever done it, but it's an extensive process that's continuous beyond what our traditional school improvement plans are. So I know this is rare, and I would hope that, I'm hopeful that the State Board of Ed will consider the impact of the A through F system on small, extremely small rural districts, as well as any immediate relief from the school improvement plan. And I appreciate your opportunity today. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Superintendent. Lastly, we have Esley Montenegro. Ms. Montenegro?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Just one second. Okay, there you go. Go ahead, Ms. Montenegro.
Thank you. Thank you, President Narducci, Superintendent, and board members. I really appreciate this opportunity to speak. I'm the Implementation Director for the American Federation for Children, and I'm representing Arizona families from all over our beautiful state who are fighting for school choice options, especially during these unprecedented times. Among all school choice options, I'm here today to speak for hundreds of families who are using the Empowerment Scholarship account. And to continue to meet, we need your support with providing that flexibility to educate their children, especially low-income families who have disadvantages. Several families who I've worked with and help and support have approached me with a constant issue on the application process recently. And it's an ongoing problem, but I'm going to continue to bring it up until it's rectified. A consistent problem exists where the parent attempts to submit the application several times, and the system has a sensitive error that does not easily allow families to submit the application successfully. They get a constant error that their signature does not go through, and then at times it's just a complete application error and like a completely blackout on the URL. A handful of families with children who have special needs, these are families that have been completely impacted by COVID-19, were not able to submit the application by February 1st. And that was, again, by many setbacks that the pandemic created, and most importantly, due to this constant application error. I'm respectfully requesting ADE to look at this application technicality and rectify the final signature page to submit an ESA application so families are not discouraged or turned away from submitting an application. So many families are struggling in the current school year, and I'm talking about current school year, not for next school year. And I assisted a handful of families to do the same appeal, and they too were denied. And so I'm asking the same to please help us follow the current rules and extend Q4 deadlines. And finally, once again, I kindly request and remind the State Board for the possibility to use the ESA class wallet system to pay for tuition and issue each ESA parent a debit card so they are able to pay for all other school necessities. Currently, the issue is limiting what they can purchase because they do not have the access with class wallet. The vendors typically don't have that access very easily and in a timely manner. I thank you again for your time and attention, and I sincerely appreciate all you do for all Arizona children. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ashley.
Vice President Kaur, that concludes item number 2.
Thank you so much. Then we will, with that, move on to the consent agenda. We have 7 items on the consent agenda. Is there a desire from any board member to remove any of those items, or can we take them as a group? Okay, hearing no one desiring to remove any of the items from the consent agenda, I'm reminded that at this point we need cameras on and off mute, but do I have a motion to approve consent agenda items 3A through 3G?
So moved.
Thank you, Dr. Robbins. Do I have a second?
Second.
I'm
Michelle
not
K.
sure. Who is that?
It's Michelle K.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, Member K. So again, cameras on and off mute. All in favor of approving the consent agenda as presented indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, same sign. Thank you much. Item 4, Executive Director Williams, do we have any members of the public wishing to speak for this call to the public?
Vice President Core, we do not have any requests to speak for item 4 on today's agenda.
Fantastic. Then I will move on to everyone's favorite part of the agenda when we get to hear from Deputy Director Baden, who will run us through a legislative update and seek any board action if appropriate. Are you there, Deputy Director Baden?
Yes, Vice President Core and Superintendent Hoffman, I am here and unfortunately struggling with some connection issues this morning. So you'll have to forgive me that I go without a camera. I'm sure nobody's heart is breaking at not being able to see me this morning. Yes, to the one general session item today, I will run through because it is our only general session agenda item today, which is a bit unusual. I'll take a little bit more time than we normally do, which is actually a good time of the year to do it. And that is because last week was the last week to hear bills in the originating chambers committee. So that means if a bill has not passed its first committee, its chances of moving were hurt pretty significantly. That doesn't mean that the concept is entirely dead, but it does mean that it failed to clear the first hurdle, which does hurt its chances moving forward. So that's why the list that we provided you has slimmed down significantly, and that's because we removed those bills that didn't clear that first hurdle and received the first hearing. The other reason the list has slimmed down significantly is that a few of the bills have already been signed by the governor, and that includes House Bill 2023, which is this board's educator discipline bill, which is really good news. Of course, that was a big priority for the board, as well as House Bill 2402, which was the A to F pause bill. I think Superintendent Willington referenced the temporary pause on issuing letter grades this year. The legislature did need to take action on that and did pass that and was signed by the governor last week and was accompanied by an executive order as well. So a couple of things already getting passed and signed. Now, moving on to the bills that are still making their way through the process. The first I want to talk about is Senate Bill 1572. This was the fourth and final legislative priority for the board, and I mentioned the other three because there were two included in the A to F pause bill, have already been signed by the governor. So hopefully if this one gets across the finish line, we'll go 4 for 4 this year, which would be a good year. As a reminder, Senate Bill 1572 is an effort to improve early literacy in the state by requiring a statewide kinder evaluation tool, expanding and supporting educator capacity by requiring a literacy endorsement for educators in those earlier grades, and ensuring parents receive notifications about their students' progress towards reading proficiency. Now, the bill was amended in committee to also require our board to study the Move On When Reading program and issue additional recommendations by the end of this year. Now, that's an important addition because Move On When Reading is set to expire next year. So this board will play an important role in shaping the future of that program and something similar to what the board has already done the last couple of years with the ad hoc committee. So important bill there, and we'll keep working on that. There's also an amendment that might be coming on that one to make sure it doesn't conflict with another bill regarding dyslexia that Mr. Boyer is running. We had a good stakeholder meeting last week, I believe, or maybe, no, I believe it was last week, to ensure that those bills don't conflict and have some similar language. So that way the dyslexia fixes that have been in the works for a couple of years are passed, as well as the changes in 1572. On to a few other bills. Senate Bill 1683 is the $10 million transportation grant program that directs the board to distribute funds to schools and parents beginning this summer for innovative transportation efforts. We had some discussions and concerns about our ability to administer a grant program on such a short timeline. And to their credit, the proponents of the bill and the sponsor have committed to finding a new home for it. Of course, that bill might keep moving, but it also is going to be part of any budget discussion as well. So appreciate the continued efforts and discussions and look forward to seeing some language on that one moving forward. Moving over to a couple of House bills. House Bill 2421 and 2682 have different sponsors, but are similar efforts regarding online and distance education. Both attempt to update when the state considers a school an AOI. Currently, the statute, which is a couple decades old, basically just says if a school is offering more than 4 courses online, they're an AOI school. And there's a kind of vague definition of what an online course provider could be. I think what we probably would call an online program. Both of these bills try to establish and update a more bright line threshold of total instruction time that is online. Above that threshold would require approval through our board and the charter board through our AOI process, and below then would allow schools to offer online courses without at least that approval. Now, House Bill 2682 also provides some seat time flexibility, similar to what schools have under the executive order. Meanwhile, House Bill 2421 requires ADE to establish and then our board to approve an online course catalog for schools for grades 6-12 and courses that are taken over the summer or winter breaks, or courses that are retakes. Now, our board is required to review those courses, and our board may also remove them if they're not of quality in the board's opinion. And to carry out those reviews, collect the complaints and feedback from students in schools, establish the metrics, et cetera, and so forth. Our board is requesting at the direction of the legislative committee, of course, of additional staff to effectively implement that bill. And the sponsor and proponents have committed to working with us on getting that support. So we appreciate that, of course, as always. And we've been talking to some folks over in Florida who have a similar online course catalog about how they went about implementing that, and trying to figure out how we can learn from them and implement their best practices and lessons learned. Speaking on the note of administration, around this time of year, we usually try to take a step back and look at all the possible requirements coming to the board from the legislature. Obviously, as we go through the year, we take those bills kind of one at a time in terms of requirements, and look at a bill individually and its individual impact on our board and what we might need or don't need. But this time of year, we like to take a step back and look to see, how that would add up. And right now, there are roughly 13 bills or proposals that are either moving or included in the executive budget that require an administrative lift of at least some significance. So what that means is those are 13 bills or proposals that don't include just like a conforming rulemaking change or something that we would put on a consent agenda that wouldn't be a huge lift for the board. We're talking about grant programs, significant policy development, new programs that we would have to administer. That's about 13. And to give you an idea, at this point last year, we had about half that number that were either included in the executive budget or were part of proposals that were making their way through the process. So certainly seeing an uptick this year. Part of that is the result of a lot of legislation and proposals dying last year due to COVID. Part of that, I think, is some interest as the result of COVID, actually, some motivation to get some things done around, I mentioned 2 of them, like distance and online education. So it's only February, so there's still a long way to go for a lot of those bills, but right now looking at an uptick in terms of an administrative lift for this board compared to previous years. And then finally, just one other bill that I want to talk about before wrapping up here is House Bill 2787, which passed out of House Commerce last week. Now, this bill is not specific to education, but rather it applies to all state agencies with a few exceptions after an amendment. It prohibits state agencies from considering certain types of information when issuing a license, permit, or certification. Specifically, it would prohibit this board from considering dismissed or sealed convictions, juvenile adjudications, and nonviolent misdemeanors when determining whether to issue a certification. Now, the proponents of the bill, we've had some conversations with them, want to ensure that there's a nexus between the information and history that agencies are considering and the license, permit, or certification they're issuing. And of course, that probably sounds familiar to all of you, because that's something we do every time we have discipline in front of this board, and part of the process that this board uses. At the direction of the legislative committee, staff has had some conversation with those proponents. We've made some progress and moved closer to being more comfortable with that bill. There was an amendment in committee that provided a small exemption for one of the types of informations I didn't mention that moved us closer and was a good progress. However, just want to mention that a flat prohibition on considering those other three types of informations that I mentioned would still have a significant impact on the board and the educator discipline process moving forward. So that bill's scheduled, I think it was already went through rules and caucus earlier today before this board meeting. So that's it. Thank you for bearing with me. Like I said, I know that was a little bit longer than we normally do, but thought it was worth the time today. So I'm happy to answer any questions that members may have.
Any questions for Deputy Director Baden?
Yes, this is Calvin Baker, Vice President Core and members of the board and Ketcher. Question or two on 1572. Am I correct in understanding that it requires that all K-5 teachers obtain a literacy endorsement, and that endorsement would require 6 credit hours that the teacher would have to pay for themselves?
Dr. Core and Member Baker, it would require a literacy endorsement for all certified educators in K-5. There might be some exceptions. Our board would have some flexibility in determining which teachers specifically. For example, there might be elementary school arts teacher that maybe is not necessary to have a literacy endorsement of this rigor. But yes, it would require that by August of 2025, and all those individuals up to 2025 and after 2025 would have 3 years to get the endorsement. So if, for example, somebody went to the certification desk in August of 2025 or in June of 2027, and if they did not have the endorsement, they would have 3 years from the date that certification was issued to get the endorsement. As to the second part of your question on if they would have to pay for it, I think the idea is that because it's 3 years out, the educator prep programs will have time to ensure that that coursework is being offered. According to some of the EPPs that we've talked to, I think the department has talked to, a lot of them feel like they already have this coursework as part of their programming, that it wouldn't be a huge shift. So the hope is that the folks leaving Arizona prep programs would already have the coursework. For those who do not, or for current teachers who maybe did not have it as part of their prep program, ADE's MOER team, their early literacy team, has trainings that the proponents feel would be able to meet the requirements, and our board would be able to adopt ADE's training and any other training, because it's not just educator preparation program coursework, but it's also trainings. So the board could adopt ADE's trainings or anybody else's trainings that it feels meets the requirement of the statute and is of high quality on the science of reading instruction.
I understand this is a priority of the board, and intentions are great, but of course times have changed since we set this priority, and this has been a really difficult year for teachers, and if indeed it's going to require existing teachers to get 6 additional credit hours, that's a pretty expensive proposition. hopefully there'll be other opportunities to get that, but it still is a burden of time and therefore money and perhaps tuition money. And I also am concerned that this is a burden that would only be placed on traditional public schools. Is not a burden that would be placed on charter schools or private schools. So I still share the intent of the board's position on this to increase the attention that we pay to literacy, but I'm concerned about putting a burden on traditional public school teachers at this particular point in time. I just wish to express that.
Thank you, Cal.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Dr. Core and Member Baker, just also to your point, I will say that the board's recommendations on early literacy did not include this certain professional development for educators in early literacy. The proponents of the bill, who are taking the lead on it at the direction of the governor's office, wanted the certification stuff, and we did work. The original proposal was, frankly, not really workable with the existing statutes and requirements, and so, we were directed in the spirit of compromise to try to find a way to make that more workable. But you're I guess I'm validating, I guess, in some ways, your concern, and it's noted.
Any other questions or comments for Ketcher?
Vice President Core?
Yeah, please go ahead. Superintendent Hoffman.
Thank you. Ketcher, first, thank you so much for the legislative update. And I was just thinking, as you were discussing about how there are several bills, I think you said there were double the number of bills moving forward this year, double in the sense of how many require action and implementation from the State Board of Education. I just thought it might be helpful for the general public if you could explain a little bit more about the difference between ADE implementing programs and SBE implementing programs, because I know our board members are very well aware of the difference between the two agencies, but for the general public, I think, because it is notable to me to have a significant number of bills that are placing pretty steep demands on SBE to implement new programs. So if you could just help explain that to the public.
Dr. Core and Superintendent Hoffman, a conversation we have, I think Alicia can speak to this too. I think every time we meet with, yes.
You keep breaking really bad. So how about I answer that question for Superintendent Hoffman?
Okay, yeah, sorry.
Perfect. Thanks, Ketcher. Superintendent Hoffman, members of the board, and members of the public. So the State Board of Education is a constitutional board in Arizona's constitution, made up of 11 members, 10 of which are appointed by the governor, and 1 is elected, and that is the Superintendent of Public Instruction, which is currently Kathy Hoffman. State Board staff is made up of 7 individuals. Mostly we oversee education policy, K-12 education policy in the state of Arizona. So when I talk about policy, we're charged with setting a lot of the rules. The legislator passes the law signed by the governor, and then we write rules in order to implement that law. The Department of Education within our rule writing may receive some administrative functions, and they're charged with really administrating the education policy in Arizona. And then the Department of Education also does a lot of federal grant work. There are many programs in which the State Board of Education and the Department of Education partner in terms of working very closely to ensure that the state board's policy is implementable at the state level and also the district charter and individual school site levels. Superintendent Hoffman, I mean, that's my elevator pitch. Is there anything you'd like me to add?
I think that that's perfect. It's, you know, ADE has well over 600 educational professionals who are trained to implement programs across the state, and we have capacity to grow and to be, you know, I am very grateful for the strong partnership we have with the State Board of Ed, but it's a little odd to see some of the bills that are placing the responsibility of implementing these programs with the state board. So I thought it's helpful to be clear about the different roles of the two agencies and why that's significant.
Thank you, Alicia. Thank you, Superintendent Hoffman. Ketcher, so at this point, well, any other questions for Ketcher? Questions or comments for?
Member Mack has a question.
Please, go ahead.
Thank you, Vice President Kaur, President Narducci, members. I just wanted to echo what Member Baker said. I think it is the timing is of paramount concern, I think, to the field. But the other question I had, Ketcher, is has there been discussion of how this executive order would work together and dovetail with the discussions around move on when reading that's coming up very soon? And how is that going to feed into that or work into that? Or I just don't want there to be competing issues down the line.
Dr. Kaur and Dr. Mack, I'm sorry, and I might have had some break up a little bit. Did you, which executive order?
Sorry, the reading, the bill, sorry, the legislative, when we were just talking about the reading, the 6 credits.
Yes, I'm sorry. And your question was on
how are those conversations moving together with the move on when reading discussions?
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Yes, Dr. Kaur and Dr. Mack. So we met with some partners going into this legislative session and essentially agreed that we would have the discussions about extending move on when reading at the next legislative session. So the proposals coming today are obviously related to move on when reading because they're connected because it's all part of early literacy, but we agreed to kind of have a collective push on move on when reading for next legislative session. I don't know if that answers your question directly. It weaves in, I mean, the proposal, Bill 1572 does weave into move on when reading, and the MOER team at ADE has been involved to try to ensure that it happens. I hope that answers your question. If
Yeah, it does. Thank you, Ketcher. I just want to make sure there's alignment and there's no, no issues down the line.
Yeah, good question.
Thank you, Dr. Mack. Any other questions for Ketcher?
Member Welborn has a question.
Oh, thank you. I can't see you all, so I appreciate you calling on each other. I do appreciate that. Member Welborn,
can you hear me?
A question or comment?
I'm sorry.
I can hear you, Member Welborn.
Member Welborn, did you have a question or comment for Ketcher?
You can hear me or not?
We can hear you.
Oh, okay. I apologize. I've been having all sorts of fun technical challenges today. President
Member Welborn.
Dr. Yes.
Member Welborn, turn off your video and then just talk, and sometimes that helps. Well, Dr. Kaur, I think we lost Member Welborn.
I think we might have. Member Welborn, you are up next if we reconnect with you. In anticipation of that, and again, I can't see everyone on my screen right now, but is there anyone else who has a comment or question
All right, let me try this again, Dr. Carr.
Yeah, please, go ahead. Member Wellborn.
All right, so regarding the Senate Bill 1572, I just have a question for Catcher. Has there been discussion or thought about rather than training them all in the science or reading, why not require the training just for those that need it? I've learned a lot. There are many, many teachers that are doing a very good job in teaching reading, and to require additional training among those teachers seems an extra burden that's unnecessary. Can we just target somehow this training is question one. And two, just because teachers receive training doesn't necessarily guarantee that they're effective in teaching a skill. The Department of Energy or Education has training, but I don't know that just requiring the teachers is adequate. Certainly the principals and them as well if they haven't had that kind of training.
Member Wellborn, you broke up a little bit, but Deputy Director Baden, did you catch the gist of that question and comment?
Dr. Kaur and Member Wellborn, I caught the gist. So Member Wellborn, if I don't answer your question directly, forgive me, it's not intentional. I think the first part of your question was, could this be more targeted? Because there might be some educators who are already doing a good job of teaching literacy, and could we target it towards those who maybe are struggling? I mean, I will say the genesis of this, the original proposal, which was also included in the governor's executive budget, he included, I believe it was a little over $1 million to pay for the test. It would be a literacy test that would have been a requirement for certification. So educators would have had to pass this literacy specific test to be certified. In our conversations and based on our work that we've done before, we didn't feel confident that simply a test would, it would certainly create incentives for educator prep programs, but the test, for one, could be waived under a whole slew of existing state laws that provide exemptions on the subject knowledge test, whether it's reciprocity or teaching experience or what have you. But also, the test in and of itself is not, ensuring that they are getting the supports and professional development and continuing ed that they would need, and knowledge that they would need. It's simply a gatekeeper that could potentially be turning people away. So literacy endorsement will include a test, but it will also include the coursework. I guess more specifically answering whether or not this could be targeted, the board does have some flexibility in terms of the grades and which teachers this applies to. I think the board could also work with the department on some guidance to help schools, especially in those first few years, ensure that they're targeting those educators that are maybe in the most need of the coursework and training. The requirement is certainly in there, but there's also there's no teeth, I guess, for lack of a better word. So that, funding is not pulled if they don't have the endorsement. It's not a demerit on any portion of their literacy plans or anything like that. So I think we could work with schools and with ADE on guidance to make sure that they're targeting those, especially at the beginning, as they try to come into compliance with the statute. And then frankly, the second part of your question, I'm sorry, it just broke up a little too much and I didn't catch it, but I'm happy to follow up with you if you wanted to try to elaborate here, but I can also follow up offline if need be.
Catcher, member Wellborn, the second part of the question had to do with administrators.
Actually, Member Wellborn made two really good points. One, and I'll just add my own narrative to what she said. One is that the majority of our teachers are doing a great job, and to require them to undergo more training at their own time, on their own time, at their own expense, they are quite justifiably going to see that as an insult. I certainly would. And if I'm doing something and I'm doing it well, it's sort of like the teacher punishing the whole class. Well, you've all got to do this because a couple of people aren't doing it well. So I think the good intent of this is actually a harmful intent in the eyes of competent and high-performing teachers. And the other point that Member Wellborn made is that for those who are not doing it well, it is, I mean, if you look at the statistics and research, it's very unlikely that simply requiring 6 additional credit hours in literacy is going to necessarily improve the performance of those low performing, that smaller group of lower performing teachers.
Thank you, Member Baker. Thank you, Member Wellborn. Other questions or comments for Deputy Director Baden? Hearing none, scrolling up and down, seeing none. Ketcher, at this point, you are not looking for any board action, or this was simply an update and to solicit input from the board. Is that correct?
That's correct, sir.
All right, thank you very much. And we fought our way through some Zoom struggles there, but I think everyone got their comments in and questions answered. I appreciate it. We'll move on to number 6. Director Williams, do we have any members of the public wishing to speak on certification enforcement actions?
Dr. Core, item 6 is for the consent portion of our discipline agenda. We do not have any requests to speak for this item, but we do have 7 individuals for agenda item 8.
Very good. So then we will move on to 7, which is in fact the consent agenda certification enforcement actions. We are able to take these, given they are consent agendas, as a single motion. So at this point, well, first of all, I will ask, is there any member who would like any one of these 3 actions pulled from the consent? Hearing none, then with ideally cameras on and unmuted, at this point, I would seek a motion to approve items 7A1, 7A2, and 7A3. Do I have such a motion?
So moved. Member Broussard.
I'm gonna get Member Broussard in at the wire for the first, and do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
Narducci.
Oh, President Narducci, fantastic. And then with that, again, just a quick reminder with cameras on and unmuted. All in favor of approving the consent agenda for enforcement actions, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Same sign. Okay, then motion passes, and we will move on to call to the public. And as Director Williams has indicated, we have a number of folks who wish to speak to the board during this call to the public. I would ask that folks limit their comments to 3 minutes. And Director Williams, you want to direct traffic through this one for us?
Yes, thank you, Vice President Core. First up, we have Amy Mitzler, followed by Allison Brogan. Amy? Go ahead and unmute yourself, Amy.
Thank you so much.
Amy, give me 1 second, Amy. Jessica, can you pull up the timer, please? Okay, go ahead, Amy. Thank you.
Thank you. Dear State Board of Education members, as you have reviewed said documents for your consideration, to approve the application for my certification, please consider these important points. Firstly, my record of employment as an educator is exemplary. My past has not negatively affected my dedication or performance. Secondly, I love my job as an educator. I'm always striving to improve my teaching skills and relationships with my students. Thirdly, my students' quality of education is my highest priority. Fourthly, my son is my greatest love and source of inspiration. He is thriving both academically and socially, which is a testament to his loving and stable home life. He currently has straight A's, and he continues to amaze me as a mother and a teacher. For example, it was just in January of this year that he has received Scholar of the Month. Fifthly, this situation could have broken my spirit. However, I have chose to persevere and overcome the obstacles that have been set before me. I am better for it. In closing, I have chosen to learn from my past, and I have made incredible strides to prove I am a better person and educator throughout this situation. I have chosen to persevere, and in doing so, have become the best version of myself, as well as the best version as a qualified educator. I thank you for your time and consideration. I respectfully request for your approval for certification so that I may continue to serve the students.
I was trying to find you on the screen. Thank you, Amy. Next up, we have Allison Brogan, followed by Kelly Nelson. Is Allison on the call?
Executive Director Williams, Allison Brogan was with us earlier, but appears that she has departed from the meeting.
Okay.
We do have Kelly Nelson with us.
Okay, let's skip Miss Brogan, see if she calls back in. Kelly Nelson, you are up next, followed by Rob Gilmore. Kelly?
Hi, good morning.
Good morning. We can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much for this opportunity. So my name is Kelly Nelson. I am principal within the Menta Group, and I am here today on behalf of Sherry Smith. So Sherry has worked within our organization since October of 2019. So as principal of the program, I have seen Sherry in action. I can speak to her character and what a wonderful educator she is. Sherry is kind and compassionate. You know, we work with special needs students, and Sherry works with some of our students with the most significant cognitive disabilities. And she is patient and loving and kind and is willing to do anything necessary for the benefit of her students. So one particular example is we have a student who is nonverbal, and his family was moving from the United States back to Pakistan. And so Sherry took it upon herself to create a giant PECS notebook for the student, because we knew that back in his home country, they don't have the same supports. And she wanted to ensure that her students still had the means to communicate even when he was back in Pakistan. So, and it's like, she did that on the weekend. Nobody had asked her to, she just knew that that was in the best interest of her students. So, and that's the kind of thing that she does regularly. There's never a, no, I can't do that. It's yes, absolutely. Is that what's going to be the best for the kids? Great, let's take care of that. She works with students with pretty significant behavioral challenges, and again, does so kindly, calmly, and is always looking towards how can we help students continue to progress in their education. So really focusing on those academic skills, those daily living skills, the behavioral skills. She's wonderful with parents. You know, she will talk to families, almost be a counselor for the families, because we know that as a parent, it can be really challenging. So she's there for families. She works well with her staff. I mean, she's the first one to jump into and use, you know, say, oh, a kid needs to be changed in the bathroom. Like, I got him. So she's just always working as that solid team member that you would want as an educator. So I have had nothing but wonderful, positive experience with Miss Sherry. She's amazing. And I hope that helps clear up any information. So thank you for the opportunity to speak today.
Thank you, Kelly. Next up, we have Rob Gilmore, followed by Sherry Smith. Rob? Rob, go ahead and unmute yourself, Rob.
Okay, good.
There you go. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much for taking the time to allow me to speak about Sherry Smith. I had the pleasure of meeting Sherry at the start of the academic year in August of 2016 as a school principal at Excel in Tempe. Excel is a private day school, level D, and the school brought in many students with all types of disabilities. I was the principal there for 3 years, and now I work in a ED setting at a different private day school. However, in my experiences in leadership and in my 25 years in special education, I'd have to say that Sherry Smith ranks as one of the most caring, considerate, loving, passionate teachers that I've come across in all my years. The students at Excel brought all types of severe cognitive delays and an abundance of behavior, including attacking staff members, punching staff, kicking staff, spitting. Sherry still has scars from these experiences of being hit and kicked. I've seen her deal with being punched in the moment and turning and providing a smile and a look of comfort to the student who attacked her. This speaks volumes to Sherry Smith's character as a classroom teacher. One thing I can share with you as an example that still gives me goosebumps today. We had a vocation room that we had opened, and we're very proud of our vocational efforts at Excel with working with students to find an outlet. We were building cornhole boards. We were doing all types of activities. And Sherry approached me early in August of 2017 and said, Rob, I want my students to go to the vocational class. And I told her at that time that the students that she had did not demonstrate the fact that we could trust them within that setting at that particular time. And I gave her the idea, or gave her the concept of let's create a roadmap for the success of our students by getting them in there at some point by the end of the year. Sherry took that as a challenge, and within 2 months, 60 days, these kids were in that classroom flourishing. And boy, did she turn my belief in the kids that she had. She saw the belief in these kids. She saw the greatness in kids that sometimes a school principal would never see. And when I share with you also the belief in the private day setting, being a level D with district placed kids, her classroom consisted of 5 kids at the start of the year. And before Christmas, 4 months later, her student class was 12 and at capacity. And that's because the district leaders saw Sherry Smith's leadership and exceptional talents as a special education teacher. And I can't say enough about her. She's an exceptional person. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Sherry Smith, followed by Kathy Burwell. Sherry Smith. You just need to unmute yourself, Ms. Smith.
Hello?
There you go. Thank you.
Hi. How are you, members of the board? Thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak to you today. I appreciate the chance to address my case with you. When I started in the field of education, I quickly realized that working with children with special needs was my calling. I am blessed each day that I get to work with my students and their parents. When I realized that I could continue to help my families in my role, I applied for my special education certificate. I truthfully disclosed my arrest and explained to the department what happened. As you might see from my letter to the department, my poor decision-making happened at a time of great personal turmoil and transition. I have been the victim of infidelity in a long-term relationship, and at the time I didn't appreciate the sorrow and sadness it had caused me. I am thankful that it was allowed me to complete a program of counseling and education to resolve this arrest. I learned a great deal about myself and the safe and healthy coping strategies I have used my arrest as a turning point. I have tried to take responsibility for my actions, and in doing so, including disclosing my arrest to my employer and ensuring they were aware of my situation with the department as well. I know that my ability to teach is a privilege, and I understand that I am expected to model good behavior in all settings. I hope you will believe me and that I have never allowed my personal life to impact my teaching. I am proud and humbled to receive the positive feedback that increased responsibilities from my employer. I cannot erase my decision from the night of the evening, but I can learn from it, and I have learned from it. I also have put many things in place in my personal life to make sure that I do not put myself in this similar situation in the future. I exercise and seek support from my friends, family, and colleagues. I have turned my focus on self-care and self-improvement and work to be someone that I could be proud of. My arrest does not define me, and I know it does. I know I need to rebuild my trust with the department. As I go forward, I will continue to demonstrate that I am worthy of my certificate. Thank you for letting me address my case with you today.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Next up, we have Kathy Burwell, followed by Flynn Carey. Kathy? Kathy, go ahead and unmute yourself, please.
So sorry, I had to find the right button.
No worries, we can hear you now. Go ahead.
Okay. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak on behalf of Sherry Smith. My name is Kathy Burwell, and I am the Regional Director for the Mentor Group Special Education Services. We operate private day schools throughout Arizona that service special education students with severe behavioral needs. I've worked for Menta for the past 5 years, and I've worked in education for over 15 years. We hired Sherry in October of 2019 as she was finishing classes as a special education intern. We hired Sherry to work with some of our toughest, most aggressive high school life skills students. Many of the students that Sherry works with are nonverbal. We needed someone who could individualize curriculum to help the students advance both academically as well as social emotionally. It takes a very special teacher to have the patience, persistence, and creativity to work with our students. Additionally, we had to find someone who is not afraid to work with our students, as they can have very explosive and aggressive behaviors. We found just the right teacher in Sherry. She has been one of the most patient and persistent teachers I have ever worked with. Our families, who are often very demanding, love Sherry and praise the growth they have seen in their students since they began working with Sherry. As one of our parents, whose son was recently placed with us in August of 2019 as a 9th grade student, recently stated that his son had grown more under Sherry in the past year than in any other school year. It is not uncommon to find Sherry take personal responsibility for the growth of her students. She's been willing to come in early and work late to develop creative lessons to ensure that all of her students are engaged in learning. I have known her to be honest and reliable, and as a staff member with utmost integrity. She is an amazing teacher and has a unique ability to reach her students. She has the foresight to push her students to perform at their very best. We've called upon her to mentor new teachers, and we find her pulling together resources for them even over the weekend. Her goal is always to provide an optimal learning environment for all students. She has put together a team who embrace her love for learning. And after working with Sherry, we've had assistants decide to pursue the field of special education. Recently, an instructional assistant just shared with me how excited she was to be able to learn from Sherry and is too considering entering special education. Even given the unfortunate events that have occurred in her past, I would without hesitation employ Sherry in a teaching role if given the opportunity. We all make mistakes in life. It's how you learn from your mistakes that impact your character and shape your character and impact the lives of others. In my opinion, Sherry has developed the empathy and compassion and drive to relate to others and to help them. These are character traits we cannot teach. The teaching community and our students would suffer a huge loss without Sherry. She is an amazing teacher, and I wish we had more like her. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Kathy. Next up, we have Flynn Carey. And then Dr. Core, after Mr. Carey speaks, I do want to address an issue we had with a speaker who should have went with item 2. We just happened to miss her. But I believe she's on the line. So as long as you allow that after Mr. Carey, that will be Vanessa DiCarlo. So Mr. Carey, you're up next.
Thank you. President Narducci, Vice President Core, members of the board. I am the attorney for Sherry Smith. This is a case in which she was arrested and charged in misdemeanor court, completed diversion, and had her case dismissed. There was a claim in 2007, but a prosecutor dismissed that claim within 24 hours, finding no legal basis for the allegations. To be clear today, she has no criminal convictions. She has no pending cases. At PPAC, there was some significant disagreement about the conduct that led to her arrest, including the fact that there was no video evidence and an item of very low value was at stake in the case. And we also introduced a lot of evidence of her personal situation. There was a split vote at PPAC. PPAC found only one aggravator, which was illegal conduct. They found 5 mitigators, no priors, personal or emotional problems at the time, good faith efforts to rectify the consequences, full and free disclosure, and cooperative attitude towards the department. Even during the time of this personal turmoil, she was still receiving stellar positive evaluations, and that occurred before, during, and after the time of this one arrest. There is no evidence that a single poor outside of work decision impacted her ability or fitness to practice. There is no nexus between what happened outside of the school setting and her position as an educator. In fact, during PPAC, there was testimony that her prior employer stated she continues to demonstrate many of the wonderful habits and traits as a school teacher. She was called resourceful, and she rated all 4s in a recent eval, which is the highest rating available. She's been called a wonderful educator, and Ms. Brogan, who was unable to appear today, said, despite her investigation, I feel confident in saying she is an asset to our program, and I would highly recommend her. If you need any more evidence, you saw her superiors, her principal, the people in very high levels of her at her school speaking highly of her and acknowledging that she has both grown and she is someone who helps others grow. So this is someone who multiple mitigators were found, and these mitigators that PPAC and the board uses, they need to mean something. They're in the regulations, that they're in the documentation that mitigators count, and there were 5 of them here. This is someone who overwhelmingly has demonstrated her fitness to practice and the value she brings to the profession. And so it is our request that you do not revoke. And in fact, you allow her to have her endorsement. And if you feel discipline is necessary, we would suggest a censure is more appropriate than taking steps to suspend or revoke Ms. Smith. This is a valuable educator, and we encourage the board to allow her to continue. Thank you.
Vice President Core, would it be okay for Vanessa DiCarlo to speak? She did register on the 15th of February. We just missed her in our list today.
Absolutely, and our apologies to you, Vanessa, for skipping you the first time. We'd love to give you the floor at this point.
Thank you, Dr. Core. Vanessa, go ahead.
Thank you very much. I have 3 kids on ESA. We appreciate ESA and have really benefited from that, my children's education. I'm also qualified as an expert witness within the area of special education, and I've conducted AT evaluations, IEEs hired by public schools. So that my background has been in special education. Many years ago, also served as an AZ support cadre for ADE and traveled around to various schools. So with that experience within ESA and within my own field, I'd like to talk about the denying of AT equipment. When we're looking at ADE staff that are not either AT specialists or not on the team of that the children are actually on, looking at like special educators, speech pathologists, OTs that are actually looking at these children every day, it's really concerning when I'm seeing denial letters, and helped a few families trying to obtain the AT that their teams have also looked at and also had to evaluate them. So I have concerns around the denial of AT, especially in light of COVID and the pandemic. I feel like it's denials that are capricious and not based on state statute. Also, the fact that putting extra sort of barriers that deny accessibility for children in light of the pandemic, and looking at online classes for many kids with underlying health conditions that need to access online schooling, like my children. So I think it's really important to keep those things in mind and not put in extra barriers. It has been very difficult for these families. Additionally, any other extra barriers that would end up saving parents money, like looking at these lifetime subscriptions that are also often more cost effective for families than these month-to-month subscriptions. So I think those things are very important. It will be, I think, moving forward, looking at the card is going to be critical, especially from an AT perspective, because when we're looking at App Store and a lot of these apps that can only be accessible through a card, and these learning apps can be very cost effective and are really having a lot of research behind the outcomes for assistive technology, especially with students with autism, as an evidence-based practice of technology-based interventions. When you're looking at the standards for evidence-based practice within autism. So I just really want that to be at the forefront of the minds of folks that are making these decisions, to not go above and beyond. I understand that it's your job to make sure that the funds are used appropriately and responsibly, but forcing or creating extra barriers is very, very difficult for families. Thank you very much, and I appreciate ESA.
Thank you, Vanessa. Appreciate it.
Dr. Kaur, that concludes the request to speak.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And with that, I will move us on to item 9 of the general session, and items 9A1 through 9A3 are negotiated settlement agreements, which allows us to take these as a single motion, which I wish to do. So again, with cameras on and unmuted, do I have a motion to approve items 9A1 through 9A3?
So moved.
Thank you, Member Baker. Do I have a second?
Second, Robbins.
Thank you, Dr. Robbins. And again, with cameras on and unmuted, and all in favor of approving items 9A1 through 9A3, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Same sign. Thank you. We will move on to 9B. So with this, do I have a motion to adopt the findings of fact, conclusion of law, and the recommendation of the PPAC to deny the application for certification of Sherry Smith for a period of 3 years, and suspend the certificates of Sherry Smith for a period of 3 years, and that all states and territories be so notified?
So move.
Member Baker, do I have a second?
Second, Narducci.
President Narducci, a second. Any conversation?
Vice President Kaur.
Please, Superintendent Hoffman.
Thank you. President Narducci and board members, I was compelled by the testimonies from the school leaders who testified on behalf of Sherry, so I think it's at least worth a conversation.
Thank you, Superintendent Hoffman. Others who wish to comment?
Vice President Kaur?
Yes, please. Member Ruiz.
President Narducci, Vice President Kaur, Superintendent Hoffman, and members. I also was moved by the testimony, and I looked through. You got you essentially have a shoplifting item of $14, and you know, I think censure might that form, but this is really harsh. I just don't think it accomplishes what we'd like to. It's just really harsh.
This is Member Burton. I also, I agree with what Member Ruiz said. Even before hearing the testimony, I thought 3 years was harsh. And I've been cold in Costco. I've never walked out with a shirt in it, but I mean a sweatshirt, but I can actually see how it was an innocent mistake. But I've been moved by the testimony, and I think this teacher belongs in a SPED classroom.
Vice President, core members, I know that Member Ruiz and Member Burton have brought up the shoplifting. However, there was some drug paraphernalia also found on the individual.
Right. Vice President Core?
Yes, please, Member Ruiz.
Just what on that, I read through, and there's a big difference on what the paraphernalia was for. Now, if it's crack, that's very different than, weed, marijuana. And it didn't say what the paraphernalia was for. And I think that's a key question. If it's crack cocaine, that's very, very different. But absent that, I don't know.
Yeah.
Would anyone else like to comment?
This is Narducci.
Oh yeah, please, Luke, go ahead.
I was going through that, and I had my reading was that it was an indication for meth, but I could be wrong. And I read through all of the comments of the PPAC members, and they had suggested some concerns about drug rehab not being a condition of the decision. There was indication that maybe the 3 years, the nay votes, the nay votes were just essentially that the 3 years might be too long. There were 5 in favor of the decision versus 2 that were not. But the 2 that were not never indicated a letter of censure. They did indicate that the 3 may be too long. And I listened to all the comments today, and I believe that the candidate probably is a valued asset in the community with respect to all the things that she does in a positive manner. And I also believe that when people make mistakes, their mistakes in this conduct world reflect on their profession as well as their individual decision making. However, I am not opposed to our board considering a lesser number of years. However, I do think that the possession of the drug paraphernalia as well as that conduct does fall in line with where the PPAC was headed, which was a couple of years or so of delay for another application.
Thank you, President Narducci. Member Baker.
Yeah, Vice President, core members of the board. I also was compelled by the testimony, but I also am very cognizant of the fact that when we make these decisions, we're not making a decision just about the one particular teacher, but we are making a decision about what kind of standards are we going to set for the teaching profession. And the issues here are not insignificant. The recommended action is not permanent. It's a temporary, it's a payment. And I also feel an obligation to be supportive of the PPAC, who spent a lot more time on this than we are. Like President Narducci, I'd be willing to consider a reduction in years, but I don't think this should be treated lightly. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Baker. Anyone else with any comments or concerns?
Yeah, Vice President Core.
Yeah, please.
President Narducci, Vice President Core, Superintendent Hoffman, members. I don't think it's treating it lightly. I think, and I understand that when we vote on these, we're setting parameters of expectations. But you have a split vote. And anytime you have a split vote, that tells me that nobody's comfortable with the decision. And I think there's a better way here. And I think, there is a better way here. Censor, fewer years, but this particular item before us, the way it's presented, I just don't think it'll accomplish what we're trying to accomplish. And, we don't know what the facts are. I always hesitate on trying to read more into the facts and what it's there, is it meth? Is it crack? Is it weed? We don't know. And, infer otherwise, boy, So with what is here in front of us, with the split vote, with the mitigating factors, I think there's just a better way of doing this than what's presented before us. I think that's the point.
Thank you, Member Ruiz.
Vice President Core.
Yes, please.
Hi, it's Member Kay. Vice President Core, President Narducci, Superintendent Hoffman, and members. I believe in the transcript, I need to find it again, but it referenced methamphetamine. So I don't, Member Ruiz, some of your comments about what was the nature of it. I think personally, the suspension for 3 years did feel a little bit harsh. I also, though, feel a letter of censure is probably too light. And so I would be in support of something in between. And I don't know what the process is for that.
Thank you, Member Kay. That makes two of us, but I'm certain someone does know what that process is. Because right now we do have a motion and a second for the full 3 years. So we'll let this conversation continue and then seek guidance as to the appropriate path. Dr. Robbins, please.
Yeah, Vice President Core, President Narducci, members of the board. I have a procedural question. Is it possible, if we're concerned about drug use, at least in the medical realm, we would have mandatory drug testing? I don't know if we have the ability to give a letter of censure with mandatory drug testing for a period of time. I just asked that as a question. I too was very compelled by all of the testimony. I agree this is very, very serious and it sets precedent. I was impressed that that she is working to try to improve her situation. And I was impressed with the people who are charged with supervising her and the service she's delivering to her students. So I'm just asking a question, if we have any possibility of, if we're really concerned about drug use, do we have any possibility of having mandatory drug testing with a lesser penalty? Because I agree 3 years seems harsh.
Thank you, Dr. Robbins. Director Williams, you want to walk us through what our options might be at this point?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Core. I'll start with Dr. Robbins' question about drug testing. The State Board of Education does not do mandatory drug testing. That was something that was brought up about 3 or 4 years ago with the former superintendent of public instruction. And at that point, our lawyer said that's not something that the State Board of Education, a route that the State Board of Education can go. However, the State Board of Education within its authority does have the power to put conditions. So you could set a condition of drug counseling, a successful completion of drug counseling. You as the State Board just have to put a time frame on it. So if you do, I'll just go through different routes. If you issue a letter of censure, remember this is an application and a complaint. So you would have to grant the application and issue a letter of censure with successful completion of a drug counseling program by end date. The State Board of Education staff needs an end date in order to ensure that applicants and educators are fulfilling their conditions that the board sets. Next, if you want to do a 1-year suspension, the motion would be to deny the application for 1 year and to issue a suspension of 1 year with the conditions that within that 1 year, there's successful completion of a drug counseling course. The same would be for 2 years, et cetera.
Thank you, Director Williams. That brings some level of clarity. I appreciate that. Does anyone else wish to speak to this issue before we try to find a path forward?
Vice President Court, we would ask that the first and the second pull back their motion since we have a motion on the table. And then I would like to just reiterate for you, Dr. Kaur, that it would be imperative that the motion still accepts the findings of fact and conclusions of law, but modifies the recommendation to be, and then whatever the board feels the recommendation or the new discipline should be.
Thank you. I appreciate that guidance. I will do my best to follow directions.
Director Williams, can I simply amend my motion with the permission of the second to be a 1-year suspension with the requirement of completing a drug counseling program within the next calendar year?
Member Baker, that would be appropriate. However, it is an application as well. So the verbiage would be to deny for 1 year, suspend for 1 year with the condition.
With permission of the second, I so move that.
And as a second, I would withdraw my initial second and second this motion.
Okay. Dr. Kaur, if I could I just need to write that real quick and then I'll repeat it to both Member Baker and President Narducci so that I have it for the record.
Please.
Okay, President Kaur, Member Baker, who made the first, and President Narducci, who made the second, and all other board members. The motion is as follows. Not I, but is there a motion to adopt the findings of fact, conclusions of law, and the take it back. Let me do it again. Do I have a motion to adopt the findings of fact, conclusions of law, and deny the application for certification of Sherry Smith for a period of 1 year and suspend the certificate of Sherry Smith for a period of 1 year with the successful completion of drug counseling within 1 calendar year, and that all states and territories be so notified. Member Baker, is that appropriate?
Yes.
Thank you. And the second, President Narducci?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Director Williams. And now at this point, any comments or regarding the new motion on the floor, on the table? No? Okay. Then hearing none, again with cameras on and unmuted, if you will, all those in favor of the motion as presented by Director Williams, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Same sign. Thank you. Move on to 9C. And with this, do I have a motion to adopt the findings of fact, conclusion of law, and the recommendation of the PPAC and revoke the teaching certificates of Chad Cox for a period of 5 years and that all states and territories be so notified. Do I have a motion to that effect?
I move it. I so move.
Thank you, Member Ruiz. Do I have a second?
Second, Robbins.
Thank you, Dr. Robbins. Any conversation or discussion on this? Okay, then once again, with cameras on and unmuted, all those in favor of the motion as presented, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Same sign. Thank you. I will move on to 9D. And do I have a motion to adopt the findings of fact, conclusional law, and the recommendations of PPAC to grant Amy Messler's application for certification despite evidence showing that she engaged in unprofessional or immoral conduct because significant evidence exists that mitigates Amy Messler's conduct? Do I have a motion to this effect?
So moved. Narducci.
Thank you, President Narducci. Do I have a second?
Second, Member Kay.
Thank you, Member Kay. Any conversation or discussion on item 9D? Hearing none, then again, asked to remind you to have your camera on and unmute yourself and indicate your approval to the motion 9D by indicating aye.
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 Any opposed? Same sign. Thank you very much. We'll move on to 9E. Do I have a motion to adopt the findings of fact, conclusional law, and the recommendations of PPAC to suspend any and all teaching certificates held by Tammy Powell for a period of 3 years, and that all states and territories be so notified? Do I have a motion to this effect?
So moved. Member Broussard.
Thank you, Member Broussard. Do I have a second to this motion?
Second.
Was that Dr. Mack?
Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Mack. Appreciate it. Any conversation or discussion on item 9E? Hearing none, all those please indicate your approval by indicating aye.
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 Any opposed? Same sign. Thank you very much. We will move on to item 9F. Do I have a motion to adopt the findings of fact, conclusional law, and the recommendation of the PPAC to revoke the teaching certificates of Tyrone Searcy for a period of 5 years, and that all states and territories be so notified? Do I have a motion to this effect?
So move.
So move, Member Baker. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Member Ruiz. Any questions or discussion? All those in favor of approving item 9F as presented, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Same sign. Thank you very much. Motion passes. Item 10, just a summary of current events, future meeting dates, and items for future agendas. Does anyone have anything to share for the good of the order?
Vice President Core, I think Member Wellborn had something, but I'll go first. Dr. Robbins and Superintendent Hoffman, we really should have had a 10-hour meeting, huh? Just like Gabor. They're laughing for everyone who can't see me. Anywho, we were named in an executive order last week, as you all are aware, to look at this spring administration of the AZ-M2 and compare it to previous administrations of the AZ Merit to determine any learning loss, to create a report by November 1st and to give it to specified parties. I have been working with the Department of Education, Chief of Staff Kate Wright, to ensure that board staff and department staff will have a report to the State Board of Education no later than the October meeting, so that you all can review it and approve it, and then we can send it on its way to all parties. So I just wanted to give you all an update on that. And Member Wellborn, did you still want to address?
Thank you. I'm going
to. Member Wellborn, I think
your camera.
You froze up again. I'll just share what Member Wellborn. Member Wellborn had some numbers that she ran in regard to the CTED programs.
In regard to the information, am I heard?
We can hear you now.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to take this offline because I've got all sorts of communication issues, so I apologize.
Not a problem, Member Wellborn. I'll look for that email from you and I'll pass it along to the members if warranted. So with that's all I have, unless any other board members.
Director Williams, just as a point of pride down here in Yuma, in collaboration with our high school district, we know that many of our high school students, as many students, are struggling, some feeling disconnected. We want to make sure that all our Yuma Union High School students are on a path to not only graduate, but to enter into higher education. And as a result, we at Arizona Western College are waiving tuition for all high school students through the second half of this semester and through the summer. We want to reconnect all learners and keep them on a path to high school graduation. The high school will reverse articulate any college credit earned back towards a high school completion, and we want them on a path to not only an associate's degree from Arizona Western College, but a baccalaureate degree from one of our great 3 university partners here in Yuma. So we're proud to kick that off. We've had a lot of excitement down here in Yuma about that, because we want to achieve our BHAG of doubling baccalaureate attainment in Yuma and La Paz County by 2035. So just a bit of point of pride, some good stuff going on in Yuma.
Thank you, Dr. Kaur. I do have one last thing, which I left this off our agenda today, so I apologize, but a congratulations is in order for Superintendent Kathy Hoffman for winning, being selected from the Arizona Technology and Education Association for the Innovation Award. So congratulations, Superintendent Hoffman.
Thank you so much.
Anyone else?
I did, Vice President Kaur.
Yeah, please, Member Reese, go ahead.
Yeah, I noticed that one of the student presenters, the last 3 letters in his name was ASU. And I don't know if that was a code from Superintendent Hoffman to Dr. Robbins, but we got it.
All right. Anyone else? I was directed to finish this meeting in under 2 hours, and I've got 11:58. So at this point, I will adjourn this meeting as a mission accomplished at 11:58, and wish you all the best. Stay healthy, and thank you for your efforts today.
Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.